Shall we say the pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Okay. All right, roll call. Rob, do you want to?
Director Diamond. Here. Director Hetherington.
Here.
Director Odette.
Here.
Director Rolfe.
Here.
Director Stevens. Here. We are present.
Okay, special orders of business. We're pleased to announce that our operations team was awarded the Balkan Coast Award. Would somebody like to speak to that? Rob? Oh,
Kudos to Dave.
I'd just like to recognize our operation and maintenance team who, as you see on the screen, did receive this award. It's a pretty prestigious award in the way of maintaining an airfield runway, recognition in the wintertime, specifically for snow clearing, competing against fairly sizable airports that have a significant snow load as well, but nothing quite like the Sierras, as I'm sure we all realize. Just really well done for the whole team and for maintaining the equipment to the operating hours and the diligence throughout the year.
Congratulations to the operations team. The other special order of business, I'd like to formally welcome Rob Etmeyer as our new interim general manager. He's been here for 2.5 weeks and really pretty much up to speed for someone who's only been here for 2.5 weeks. And we appreciate you. Modification of the agenda. Would anybody like to modify the agenda? No. Okay, speak your piece reminder. I'll just read through the norms here. First is pay attention, be aware and attend to the world and the people around you. Listen, focus on others in order to better understand their points of view. Be inclusive. Welcome all groups working for the greater good of the community. Don't gossip and don't accept when others choose to do so. Show respect. Honor other people and their opinions, especially in the midst of a disagreement. Be agreeable. Look for opportunities to agree. Apologize. Be sincere and repair damaged relationships. Give constructive criticism. When disagreeing, stick to the issues and don't make a personal attack. Take responsibility. Don't shift responsibility and blame onto others. Share the disagreement publicly. Is there any public comment that's not related to agenda items? John Jones?
Hi, Teresa. Hardy, can I put this up now? Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts. I'm a little out of sync. I wrote this 2 weeks ago, and you had a special meeting this morning that I couldn't attend, talking about best board practices. And what I've done is I wrote a letter to Rob Yu with a carbon copy to you, Kat, that Lauren has, and I wanted to share some thoughts with you. As a longtime resident and former TTAD board member and aviator, there's some important concerns I would like to bring to your attention, Rob, for further review and action as well as the board. Many of the pilots in this community, along with aviation operators who interact with the airport staff, are concerned that too many of your staff are looking for opportunities to leave this airport employment because of inappropriate board practices and their lacking of commitment to the aviation community, anti-aviation behavior. And it's only by a few of your board members. There are 2,109 special districts in the state of California, and there is a significant amount of information available from consultants and the internet regarding best board practices. I am suggesting that you and the board should spend a lot of time on this topic, and I guess you've already started that, which I would applaud. Evaluating board best practices that are and are not being followed by this airport board. And include that topic on the agenda for future meetings for a review with your community and your staff. A fundamental and critical board best practice matter I would like to suggest the board discuss is that the general manager works for the board and the staff works for the general manager. The TTAD staff should be working on board member projects or requests only if the general manager assigns a staff member to work with a board committee, or the board makes a request of the general manager for some type of work or report that a majority of the board agree upon by majority vote as something important enough to take your staff's time. Another best practice I would like to suggest is that the boardroom is the domain used by the board of the board and the boardroom is used by the board members, and the airport staff offices is the domain of the staff. Board member use of the airport staff offices and/or facilities should be arranged or scheduled through you, the general manager, period. I appreciate your time and consideration in reviewing these concerns described above. Feel free to reach out to me. I've also included a couple of pages in the note to you of best board practices that I think should be considered. Thanks for your thoughts.
Thank you, John. Let's see, on the Zoom call, we have Jamie McJunkin.
Hello, everyone. Jamie McJunkin here. I wanted to speak from the perspective of a 20-year aviation community member here, and just to express a level of concern, principally about the degree to which the board seems to be focused on profit maximization above the aviation community and the broader community. I've sat through a number of board meetings now, and what I hear over and over again is, it's about profit and where's the profit? And I think what happens when we get too focused on that is we lose sight of what we're actually trying to do here. And I think this board has a broader mandate. And part of that mandate is to foster general aviation and to keep the spirit of GA alive, both within the aviation community now and future. There's a lot that aviation does to inspire youth with science and technology, broadly STEM, and I don't see us taking steps in that way. And as an example, we have this SOAR Truckee matter that we've all been paying attention to. In SOAR Truckee, in many ways, gliding represents like the most pure expression. It's like the Nordic skiing of aviation. There's no money in it. It's really about the passion and the purity of it, and it's a low-cost way for people to get into aviation. And instead of fostering something like that, we're oriented around profit maximizing. I think that's a poor choice. I think as a board and as a community, we should be talking about how do we have a flying club that you don't need to be a member to, or a pilot to be a member of, and have SOAR Truckee well featured in that flying club as a way to onboard people into aviation. So I wanted to express my concern. I think the board is well intended, but the actions have the same effect as Signature Aviation or Atlantic buying up small mom and pops and raising the prices and generally gentrifying these airports. And I think that as a community airport, we have an obligation to go the other way and to try to battle for those that, you know, that not hold it all out to the highest bidder. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Oh, we have Robert with his hand up next.
Hi, am I next? I'm Robert. I'm having a hard time hearing you. Is your microphone on?
Mine is on. Oh, when turn it.
Okay, it's not coming through the Zoom call very well. Can you turn up the level, whoever's managing the audio? Anyways, my name's Robert, and I'm involved with the Tahoe Flying Club. We are a nonprofit flying club in Truckee, based at Truckee Airport. Many of our members, we volunteer our time to help introduce kids to aviation, and we think that the airport is a really valuable resource in our community that many communities do not have. And the way that the community, you know, utilizes the airport, while most people aren't pilots, some people come to the restaurant, and many kids are introduced to aviation, STEM, and technology through the actions of the volunteers that provide services to kids, like STEM programs, Young Eagles, Civil Air Patrol, Experimental Aircraft Association, and the soaring community. Those are all organizations that help our community use the airport when otherwise they wouldn't have any reason to use the airport. And recently we had an accident with the Challenger crash, and a couple of the kids that saw that crash came to the airport to learn more about aviation through the support of their parents. And I was the pilot who flew those kids on their very first airplane flight. And one of them said to me, first of all, they were very excited about learning about aviation after having seen such a traumatic event. They used that as a learning experience and came to the airport to learn more about it. And one of them said, I want to be a pilot when I grow up. And that's one of the things that aviation can do for kids in our community. And I want to just voice that and make sure that as a community and as an airport, we're creating more reasons to utilize this resource that we have. And a couple of those are, you know, having, you know, accessibility for the soaring club to be able to afford to be there and provide those services, and also the community benefit program that you guys offer for nonprofits to be able to trade our time and labor and airplane costs for the benefit of the community. That's something that's very important, both for us and for the community and for our kids. I grew up in this town. I watched the planes and the flying and the air shows. I learned to fly and now use it as part of my business. I have now been involved in creating the flying club in order to make it more available to more people. The buy-in for the flying club is only $3,000. So if you have a pilot's license and you live in Truckee or near Truckee, you're able to use this airport even if you don't own a plane. That's something that's very important, to be able to have the airport be accessible to more and more people. And it's supported by the types of programs like the community benefit program that you have. And so I just want to make sure that we're continuing to make the airport useful to more people.
Thank you, Robert. Is there any other public comment? Okay, moving on to consent agenda. Is this on? Can you guys hear me? It doesn't seem like it's on. Can you hear me? No,
It's just for the broadcast. It won't be for the.
Is there any public comment about the consent agenda? Okay, does somebody want to make a motion?
I move,
Hold on. We haven't even discussed if there's anything we want to pull or discuss on this.
Modifications.
No, this is on the consent. We did submit questions and we were told we would get some detail on some of those questions that were on consent. So I just wanted to ask if we have those.
Yeah.
No, one of the answers says we will have that information at the meeting.
There was a specific detailed related to one of the invoices. I will bring that down. I don't have it physically with me right here, but I can bring that in here shortly. I briefly have looked at it. There is quite a bit of detail in the invoice, and I can arrange to bring that in here during the meeting. Yeah. You can bring it up.
Kelly's got it. Number 15 on there. Number 15.
Thank you.
So this was a question about one of the invoices that's referred to in the financial package.
Yeah, he said he
And this is the detailed invoice here, rather than just the total.
in the context of sharing all the information and all the questions, that would be something that I would think, it's like, I would like to see the responses as well. It's, you're responding to the person who asked the question, but it should be given to all of us, following this type of format, shouldn't it?
So a little different this board meeting, and I think has been done in the past, but it's a procedure followed by other public agency, is when the board package is prepared and presented to both the board and the public at the same time, this past Friday, I asked the board members if they had any questions about the material to send those questions to myself. I would collect those questions, separate questions from statements or opinions, and work with staff to generate a reply to those questions. And so the directors did that. Monday, they replied. By Monday, they replied with their questions. By Tuesday at noon, I had generated a list of responses to the questions, very specific questions. And that is what you'll also find published for the public and for the directors as well. You receive that reply. What I did not provide back to the directors was individual commentary or opinions about various topics. And I did that very specifically in order not to create a chain of conversation in my reply, sharing just because you're sending it in to me. If I send it back out to all the directors, that creates a kind of a chain effect of communications and sharing opinions about topics with other directors. And so I did not reply with those back to the directors. And I think if there are remaining questions or opinions about various topics, I think this is the public forum to share those and deliberate and discuss those with public input.
So to clarify, David should have just pulled item number 6 and we approved the rest of the consent agenda and then discuss number 6.
That's a good example.
That's the
David
methodology.
didn't have the option because we went, that's what I was saying. We didn't
I
have that
understand.
part of the discussion.
Just
Okay.
clarifying the new world order.
Okay, so David, you would like to pull number 6?
I'm actually, having seen it, I'm satisfied with it.
Oh,
Yeah.
anybody else?
Great. I'll make a motion, we approve the consent action items 1 through 6 as presented.
Second.
But we went,
I don't need a motion. Okay, roll call?
We don't have to roll call when we're here, right?
Oh,
So because it was agendized as a hybrid meeting, I would request a roll call vote, please. Thank you.
And so we'll go through the roll. Director Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington, sorry.
yes.
Director Odette.
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
okay. All right, moving on to the action items. The annual audit presentation and acceptance. Before we start, is there any public comment on the audit? I don't see any. So Kelly and James Marta.
Hi, good evening. I haven't used this in a long time.
And if you don't mind, I could go ahead and present on my side, then I can move through the document.
Go right ahead. This is James Marta.
Okay. And Kelly, did you have anything you want to say in the beginning, or just go for it?
I just want to say thank you to you and your staff for another great audit and all your hard work to get us here. It's great, an easy process, and we've done a lot of hard work to get here. So thank you.
Great. Well, what I'd like to do is, I know you have your audit in your package, but I want to go through the highlights. I think the auditor's job is to, one, let you know what the results of the audit was, help explain that process, but also give you information that is gives you perspective on how you're doing as compared to the prior, and is there any other comparison things to look at. And so, in starting with that, and hopefully you can see my screen, the main items on my agenda would be cover communications those charged with government. So what specific things does the auditor need to make sure that the board is informed of? The audit overall, and the internal control compliance letter. The reason I'm focusing on this communication is it's so critical that the board be informed about elements of the accounting and the audit process. Our responsibility is to give an opinion on the audit, and your staff's responsibility is for the financial statements themselves. So we're not part of the controls. We verify that controls are in place. So that might bring to light things to improve, but the operational activities and controls are under the management of your district. So we did issue an unmodified opinion, and we'll talk about that later more. And there's a new format of the report. So we have to report interactions with management. So we find out if management is having specific consultations with other auditors. We determine that if they're looking opinion shopping. There haven't been any disagreements or difficulties with management, and at the end of the audit, management gave us certain representations related to the audit as a whole. They have to actually sign a 3-page letter, certifying at conclusion a number of disclosures that they've made to us. The report we give you, there was no significant accounting policy changes, and so sometimes how they account for things can change. And as a board, you might say, well, was that important or not? Well, yes, it could be very important. That's why Enron and WorldCom went down. They changed how they did the accounting, and it was actually illegal. But sometimes governments have changed. In the past, government did not report pension liabilities, and now they do. So that's critical that the auditor communicate that to you. We have to communicate to you any significant accounting estimates in the financial, and that's really going to be collectability of receivables, the net pension liability, which is actually estimated by the outside actuaries, and then so these estimates are in line with standards as far as how they're approached. The audit procedures is not just assurance on the financials itself. We don't just check the numbers and say, hey, that's how much money you have in the bank, and look at the airport hangars and how much inventory you have. We have to understand the systems, policies, and procedures that underline all that. We gather audit evidence in detail. We do test calculations, so test calculation of bills. We do analysis on how much your fuel costs and what you're coming in and going out. And we review the accounting methods and reporting. So the planned scope of the audit was completed as planned. There have been no findings or significant disclosures that are not in the financial statements that we need to bring to your attention. So that tells us that was the underlying foundation of the accounting and the audit. There were no significant issues. Going into the audit overall, so as we said, the opinion is an unmodified, and that's the best the auditor gives. So I listened at the beginning, you talked about running the board meeting. Auditors don't say good job. We just say, the unmodified opinion. So we're not usually congratulatory because the audit is a critical review process. That being said, we will show you, this is a 3-year comparison. So it shows the net position of the airport district going from almost 54 million to 59 million. The liabilities actually have been going, they went up a little bit and they went down. And so you do see the assets increasing. And most of that is capital assets. So that's infrastructure improvement and maintenance and the current book value of those items. And so that's the biggest increase in it. So it doesn't mean that just because you have net position doesn't mean it's spendable money. Most of it's in place in fixed assets. So this graph here shows the net position by year. So it shows over time strengthening. So the green bar is the net position. The blue is the assets. And so that's made up mostly of capital assets that I just showed you. So it shows you over time, so over the last 20 years, how you have been improving the district through the capital assets and strengthening it. And so a lot of that you have to get outside, you get a lot of federal funding that's provided those resources. Going on to the statement of revenues and expenses. So your measure of your organization is not profits, it's usually services and efforts and accomplishments, but you definitely have to have the resources to do that. And so we can see that you do have a regular operations loss, but you do have other non-operating income, and that's tax, so you're funded by tax. And so regular operations does not cover the cost of your program, but the tax revenues and the grant revenues is what really makes you whole. And so without that, if you were an enterprise, a company, you wouldn't have the tax revenues to fund this. And so that really shows you where the fund is making up the difference. And so if we go ahead and look at this chart, you can see the revenues and the net position, the change in net position. Down here, would be what we might call the profit and loss. And so you're not always going to be even, because sometimes you have more expenditures in a year because you have capital items. And you see that the revenues actually, it's been more unstable, but unstable to the upside. And so that's good, but your expenses fall in line. And most of that would be resources that have been provided for capital projects, but then you've spent it on capital projects. So that's your stewardship of their funds. But sometimes you get funds earlier before you spend it. And so there will be sometimes that expenses actually could exceed revenues because of that. So because those are more capital in nature. So we can see that this is just looking at the capital assets overall. And that red line is accumulated depreciation. And depreciation is where if you put a capital asset in place for $1 million and it has a 20-year life, in accounting we go ahead and we don't deduct that all in 1 year. We deduct it a portion over each year of the life. And that's what it represents. And so down here we have work in progress, and then the total, the green line are assets put into service. So that's kind of an overview of what's happened. You kind of see over years that the airport has had a number of improvements. But the audit is a critical process. So as we said, we do look at internal control policies, procedures. We look at compliance. So we have federal monies that you get, you have tax monies, and so we see how that's receipted and spent on the appropriate accounts. And so we have no material weaknesses and no instances of non-compliance. So we're required to issue letters on compliance because you do get certain federal monies. So the district's net position has increased $3.6 million to an ending net position of $59 million, but $52 million of that are invested in capital assets, so mostly invested. We really would like to thank the staff, and especially Kelly Wu and her staff, for the efforts to make this audit successful. It's a lot of work, but we've worked side by side to get this done. With that, are there any questions?
Yeah, hey, thank you, James, for that presentation, and also to Kelly and her crew for that awesome audit. I had a question about that. I think the number was $441,000 increase in property tax. Was it?
Yes.
Yeah. That was year over year.
Yes.
Okay, so for this board, then, if we I'm thinking about when we were doing our grant cycle, we effectively did not give anything new away because we just gave away basically what the increase in taxes we've done was. So I'm thinking that might be something we want to consider if the tax revenue has gone up that much. That might be something to consider when we're thinking about that number.
Or a tiny home village, just saying.
Any more questions?
No, that's it.
Teresa? I have no questions. Mary?
I have two questions. There were 11 upcoming GASB changes, and which pertain to us or should we be aware of?
So the ones that are the primary ones that are going to be pertaining to you would be the provisions on how leases are recorded. And so to the extent that you lease property or you lease out property, we have to disclose that and report that differently. And so principally, if you lease a property from someone and that property is the lease agreement was a long-term lease, we would have to put that whole lease on your financials as a liability and as a contra asset, meaning you're showing that you have that as a resource. And so the Government Accounting Standards Board has decided that that is a better way to account for future obligations. And then contrary, if you have items that are leased out, there would be elements that would have to be recorded on your books. We actually have prepared multi-page guidance that we've been sending out to the client, and I think Kelly has gotten that already, and to prepare to analyze your contracts and see where that applies. So that could apply to copier contract, it could be applied to properties that you do, but what you'll probably be seeing from your finance team is a recommendation to adopt a policy on capitalization, so some threshold that you would not capitalize these below, so that it doesn't become too arduous in the accounting. So they might say, any leases with a 5-year value of less than $60,000, we're not going to capitalize that, and that could just be a policy. It doesn't mean that you don't keep track of that and the accounting doesn't, but it would be in your books.
And so that goes effective fiscal year ending June 30th of 2022. So that affects us.
12/31.
Yes, it does.
Okay, well, I'm reading from what we got from them, so and that's really the main significant one that is affecting us.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then the only other question, some of this is just a textual change that I had sent as a question that did not get a response. So is it appropriate for me to ask about them here, given our new world order?
Absolutely. If you have additional questions that haven't been satisfied, I think absolutely this is the forum.
So in the management report where we have financial highlights and operational highlights, we talk about revenue, but we don't talk about expenses in the text. And that information is in the tables. But to me, in the management discussion and analysis, it would be appropriate if we're going to talk about revenue, we also include a statement about expenses being up or down and how much they are, just like we do about revenue. So I'd like to see that on page 4. Is that?
I think that's something we can work on for next year.
Okay.
And the management discussion analysis has 2 sections, and then the highlights is just supposed to be, here's the quick look,
Right.
and then farther down, we do their sections about revenues and expenses, and it talks mostly about the capital items, that's what's driving it.
Yeah, I understand that, and it is the quick look, and this is why I'm saying it should be included in the quick look to just bring that number forward, just like you have revenue, you want to know what your expenses are in that text, because not everybody knows how to read a table. So that's what I'd like to see. The other one is on page 20, the statement, the Truckee Tahoe Airport District's deposit in the fund are considered to be highly liquid, although are restricted for the specific purpose of construction of a new executive hangar. That is old language. You caught a lot of it, but that particular one is still there, and that should be removed.
So hopefully management could look at that in giving us guidance for next year. Draft this for them, but they would be best to look at the specific wording of these items.
But it's wrong language for this year, and this is the audit. This becomes the final document, right?
Yes, if approved, this becomes the final document for last year's audit. And then we internally are discussing how we will present this information going forward, and what formats to convey additional information, additional context around the audit, or perhaps around a budget report.
Right.
Probably would be even a better document.
So that would be it. Thank you. You're up.
I would like to thank Kelly and the staff and Rob for revising the management report from when we posted on Friday to on Monday when it was revised. Substantial changes were made, which it's more current. And Mary's talking about one in particular. I would like to request next year and not this year that on the line item on page 14, the G&A of 5.718 million, which has a lot of stuff in there. If next time we could have some sub numbers so we could get more clear what's in there. I know that there's a lot of different pieces in there, our contribution to TART and transportation and sponsorships and all kinds of stuff like that. I'd just like to see more detail in there next year. So I am happy with what changes we've made, and thank you for that. And thank you for the audit effort, sir.
And I think we can make we can speak to those details in the 1231 financials that I present to you. The tables and the information that's coming out in the audit doesn't ever get broken down that way. But I can get you the information.
It's just how when somebody looks at this, it looks like we spent a lot of money on stuff that isn't clear what it is. You've told me what it is. I understand what it is, but I'd like to see it in print. That's my opinion. Whether you do it or not, I'll find out next year.
Yeah, it's the same thing with expenses.
Yeah, we can work on it on this side, but
thank you what you did so far.
Audit. Sure. And I just want to say a quick thank you to Emily and Michelle, because we couldn't have gotten here without them. And thank you, James.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
May I make a motion?
you may.
Well, we could do public comment after I make the motion. I move to accept the audit and financial draft statements for the calendar year ending December 31, 2021 as prepared and presented by the auditors, and recommend issuance of the final report.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
And do public comment first, and then
Well, I did the public comment first. Remember how we-
Public comment by requesting it at the beginning of the item. We can move forward, or we can ask it again. It's up to the board.
We could ask it again. We kind of reformatted it when I first took it on. That's okay.
great, I'll go through roll call. Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Kelly. Okay. Item number 9, Runway 220 design and bidding, FAA grant discussion and possible action. Is there any public comment on this particular?
I'd love to.
Go right ahead.
Hi, John Jones. As you evaluate expanding or working on runway 2220, please remember that the preferred instrument approach into this airport is to runway 20. We have had 8 fatalities from airplanes, 2 airplanes flying into runway 20 that chose to do a circle to land because while they could land on that runway, their policy was not to land on a runway that is less than 5,000 feet. And if in your evaluation, if you would consider again, widening and lengthening runway 220 to 5,000 feet or more, you just might save a few lives in the future. I'd also like to point out that there is a lot of concern over planes flying over Glenshire into runway 20. And if you would build a published visual approach into runway 20 that approached it from a heading of 16, which is the same heading as your proposed new runway, you could move all of the visual jet and turboprop traffic onto runway 20 and avoid all those houses. Conversely, you can also develop a SID, standard instrument departure, that would force those planes to take a 20 or 30 or 40 degree turn to the left when they departed. So if you're going to look at runway 220, look at the whole thing. Look at what's there, what should be there, what you can do to have a safer runway and avoid noise over a lot of your communities. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, John. I think for the purpose of this particular action item, the only thing we're really considering is the grant money that's already been designated for the pavement improvement. So while I appreciate comments and I know people have strong opinions, I think we should just keep it to what's on the agenda for this discussion. Dan, do you have something to say?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to, maybe I'll save a little less time, just echo the previous speaker's comments. Anything that will improve safety at the airport is something that seems to me the board ought to be strongly in favor of. And using that grant money to improve runway 220 will do exactly that. And it might divert some traffic away from homes in the process by following the suggestions of the previous commenter. So I'm highly in favor of this. I don't understand why it hasn't happened already. And if there's anything we can do to help this process along, I'd be happy to do whatever I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Does anyone else have public comment? Okay, who is talking about this one? Is it Rob? Great.
Yes, thank you. So in front of you, we have a recommendation from staff to address the issue of the 2021 Airport Improvement District or Airport Improvement Program grant that was applied for the previous year in 2020 and was approved and awarded in 2021 to the district by the FAA. Last year, as you see in the discussion, there was a decision before any of the work of the grant was underway. We awarded the grant work to our our contract airport engineer, Brantley, Damon Brantley, I believe is on the call today to answer any specific questions that might come up. It was put on hold for a number of reasons, and so I think we find ourselves here today to revisit whether or not we want to move forward with design work associated with the reconstruction of Runway 220 and the lights associated with that grant money. It's $410,000, $500. So I'll leave it at that for discussion or questions around that. There's been a lot of, I know, discussions about other runway impact. I believe much of that has been addressed at this point, and there is not an impact from any future potential runway, it appears, that would slow down, at least at this point, completing the design work associated with the reconstruction of Runway 220.
No, it's not. We delayed this because we weren't sure of the alignment of 1634, and we've gone far enough that we know that that is not an impact on this. So I'm in favor of doing this. We're not going to discuss it today, but I'm also in favor of widening and lengthening, which is for a future meeting. So I think we should proceed with this design work.
What I find interesting is that the estimated cost to widen and lengthen is $8 million. In today's dollars, that's an estimate. So it's, and that doesn't include the new design. Oh, it does include the design. So, and this would have to be paid for out of our dollars. This would not be something that would be paid for by the FAA.
You're talking about widening and lengthening.
Right, just so that we know, because people are saying, oh, it costs so much money. This is this other contrast of people are saying, oh, if you widen and lengthen, it will solve all the problems. Well, that's got an $8 million price tag as well. So it's just that public piece to be aware of. So, you know, it's in the ASIP, barring other discussions that we should probably have, you know, it seems like this is going to proceed.
Yeah, I think we should definitely do this, and I'm going to echo Rick's perspective about lengthening and widening, and I'm not sure when we're going to talk again about the other runway, but we've all certainly gotten a ton of feedback on that. And even, David, you had a comment about one of our consultants maybe saying something inappropriate, and I don't know when we're going to get to that, but we should. And I also wanted, John left, but I wanted to say that he spoke of the new runway as proposed, and we have not proposed anything. We're just studying it.
Right.
So I'm in favor.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, putting this into perspective, we are talking about a design study to determine feasibility. This is one of the alternates in the master plan. And in the interest of consistency across all of these alternates, I think that a parallel approach is valid. I would like to see the design work done on this in both cases for just a resurfacing and also for the widening and lengthening. And I would like to see us apply the same attention to detail on this as we have done with 1634, including usability studies, figuring out why pilots in Piston and turboprops that could be using it today are not using it today, and why they would then be using it if it were 5,000 feet. And for the pushback we have about that 1634 would still not be the longest available runway, this would still not be the longest available runway, so would then we not see any increased usage of it? And I would also like that study to as we were doing with 1634, to do some research into the impact, the potential impact of Glenshire. The number one thing that I want us to remember when we're talking about even a visual approach, we are talking about a tiny fraction of the air traffic that comes in and out of this. Over 70% of our air traffic is VFR and not subject to any of those approach procedures. So an aircraft could take off and just go straight out over Glenshire, and they are not subject to any guidance or mandatory turns or whatever by an approach because they're flying VFR. So we have our noise abatement. We can say, please avoid this area, but that's where we're at right now. So I do want to do this because I do feel like we do need to have parallel research in the future for whatever board is making a decision. But I do want to make sure that that research is parallel, that we put as much into this as we've put into 1634 research.
Thank you, David. I think we should go ahead with the reconstruction. I think we've got the money. We've got a timeline that we have to adhere to. I guess my one concern is down the line, if we decide to pursue the lengthening and widening, are we just going to take out everything that we've just done to, like from an engineering standpoint, can you add to what is done, or do we have to start all over?
For widening and lengthening.
For widening and lengthening. So does it make sense to spend all that money to improve it if only, a couple of years from now we have to chew it up and redo the whole thing? I don't know the answer to that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're talking about right now is, do we want Brandley to do the design for both options? We're not ordering one option.
No,
we're
not
only
asking.
talking about the grant work design, which is on the reconstruction of 220 as it exists today, and the lighting that goes with that. That's it.
So we're talking about doing the design of it, not
The design.
Yeah, so we're not talking about actually, so
But-
we would have an option again to decide after we see the design options, which one we would want to go with, right?
What I would recommend is that in June, next board meeting, we come back and have a recommendation discussing the impacts of widening and lengthening on design.
Okay.
Because there is a process for that, for environmental studies, for approvals, that'll take a little time.
Right.
And maybe I can ask Damon, if you're available online here, maybe just to comment briefly about how much flexibility there is in the design of just 220 and what design might look like and how much lead time you need to adjust the design with the idea to accommodate widening and lengthening of the runway as well.
Yeah, I can speak to that. How much extra time you're going to have with design, that's something we can look at. I can speak to also one of the questions kind of, if we do this design now, say even reconstruct it as is, and you wanted to widen and lengthen it later down the road, we can do the design now with that in mind, so that we're looking at it so that it can be expanded. You're going to have a little bit of extra work that'll have to be duplicated. Some of the lights can be moved a second time, and that sort of thing. But we can, you're not going to be looking at tearing up the entire runway and starting over. And that would be something we'd want to know as we're proceeding through the design.
So much higher than what Kevin told me a year ago.
I know.
Like by a factor.
And I don't know, somebody else had a question there?
No, I think you answered the question. I think if we have a feedback today about whether or not you want to move forward with the design of 220, and we have a discussion item around the other elements that might impact the design work next month, would that be sufficient time for you, Damon, to make any adjustments and accommodations?
There would be time to make adjustments and accommodations in the design. The point you brought up before about the environmental approvals and those sort of things, even though it would be the widening and lengthening would be 100% funded by the district, that a NEPA document for environmental still has to be approved by FAA. And that's the long pole here in the process of getting that approval, if you're going to try to add that to this design and construct it all at one time. My environmental consultant has told us it's with with the way FAA is approving the environmentals and going through it, it's probably a 24 to 30 month process.
So wouldn't that be something we want to move forward with right now? I mean, it's not binding, right? I mean, it's not like we get that and then we're forced to decide. I misunderstood this because I thought, based on the report, that we were asking Brandley, do we want them to do the design as is, or do we want them to do design as is and also an alternate design for widening and lengthening? That was my interpretation of that, but that's
Not what I understood.
This is just the 400,000 some that it's in the FAA grant for the reconstruction of 220 as is.
Yes, as is.
That's correct.
And
So how much more would it cost us to do the widening and lengthening at the same
400.
time? There's got to be some cost savings to do it now.
400.
Yes, there is some cost savings to do it now, and you've got that on the third page there of this item. It shows the engineering design for the widening and for the extension. And you've got 120,000 for the widening and 320,000 for the extension. The extension also would include the extension of taxiway golf, so that connected into it.
And if I understand, and I apologize because I feel like we've had this conversation a million times, and each time I come away with a different understanding. Taxiway golf is the elimination of the EAA building, is that correct?
Well, the relocation of taxiway golf, if we were just to extend the runway at this point in time, this project does not include relocating taxiway golf. That extension would include the new piece of golf at the relocated section, and then there would be a slight jog right there where it ties in the existing golf at the southern run. So then you would not be moving the EAA building with this project. That gets associated with the relocation of taxiway golf.
Thank you.
Damon, with the existing grant specifications for the reconstruction design for 220, can you, if approved today to move forward with that, can you design it in a way that would accommodate future decisions and investments of widening and lengthening?
Yes, it can be designed to where you can make that adjustment in the future. The lengthening is the easiest piece of it because that just ties on to the end. The widening, because all of the widening is on the east side, that moves the center line over in the future. It can be accommodated for. We could actually build it now with the crown at the future location of the center line if you want to. But if we do that, then you're dealing with the runway with an offset crown for that interim period, however long that happens to be. But that's a design decision we can make and adjust here over the next few months.
So if we were to come back next month with a definitive decision about widening and lengthening, you would have plenty of time to make that accommodation in the design, but you would not have to do the environmental work for the design to move forward.
That's correct. The environmental work for the design and reconstruction is complete and approved. The additional environmental that we were discussing is for any widening and extension.
Okay, thank you. Does that make sense to the director?
And is an approximate cost for that environmental ballpark?
I believe it is. I believe it's 300,000.
For environmental.
It's on page 3 of the
No,
topic.
that's design cost. It did not it didn't call out environmental.
Oh,
This is hard engineering, hard construction costs, so that's why that's an extra 300K.
which is we're going to consider in June. I think what I'd like to do is, and I'm going to make a motion that we approve the completion of fiscal year 2021 ACIP grant award design for runway
Recording stopped.
for runway 220 reconstruction
Recording in progress.
Reconstruction and Engineering and Runway Lighting awarded to Brantley Engineering, Inc.
I'll second that.
Roll call?
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Motion
But
passes.
this is with the offset? I mean, are they proceeding with design?
Just of reconstruction.
Just the reconstruction.
As is.
As is.
As is my understanding.
But if we come back in June.
We'll come back in June and discuss widening and extension and all that's involved in that for cost or what decision is necessary to impact design right now and long-term application process and environmental processes.
So he's sort of starting design, but not completely till June, right? I mean, because if we make that decision in June, it's a different design. The crown of, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I had one other question about it, sorry. Is the lighting different than what's there now under this existing, under the new ACIP grant?
I just made a question. I think the meeting's on mute.
Oh. I'm on mute? Okay.
We're on mute.
We're all on mute.
Oh.
And I'm not sure he heard our motion because we got disconnected. Damon.
Damon, were you able to hear our motion? And can you hear us now?
I can hear you now. It just turned back on.
Okay. I just had a question, and I'm sorry it wasn't ahead, but is the lighting different than what's there now, or is it the same lighting?
When you widen it, would it be different lighting?
Well, even under the existing.
We're going to replace the lighting. We're going to redo all the lighting on the runway
Right.
with this existing reconstruction design.
But this,
If you did widen it at a later date, you would have to move one set of lights, the east set of lights to the further east.
to the outside, and
Yes.
but in terms of the aviation aspect of it, they're not different.
No, they're not different.
Thank you.
Thank you, Damon.
Damon, did you get cut off before? Did you hear our motion and our vote?
I did not hear the motion or the vote. I think the whole meeting went on mute for.
You're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll get moving. We've got the geotech set up for July 11th, so as soon as they can get out there.
Up to the point of in June if we decide to widen and lengthen.
Okay.
So that design may shift, but that's a pavement more than, yeah, geotech.
Yes, and as I noted, I won't be here on that for that June meeting, but I'll listen and hear back from Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today.
Welcome. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to number 10, Resolution 2022, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Mission and Vision and Policy Instruction 320, Non-Discrimination by Vendors Approval. Is there any public comment on this item? Hardy, did you want to speak to this?
I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
Okay.
Thanks, Hardy. So we have two items under this tab. Item number 10, we have Resolution 2022-1, Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, Mission and Vision and Policy Instruction. And also we have Policy Instruction 320, Non-Discrimination by Vendors. And they are both presented in information and for your review, questions, and consideration.
David, do you have questions?
I do not.
No questions.
My only point was, in terms of the policy instruction, it should be non-discrimination by vendors, contractors, and lessees, beyond just, people who are on the field should agree to these as well.
And we did take that comment. I did confer with our staff here and with Josh. And Josh, if you're available, our attorney for the district, to maybe comment on that.
Sure. Yeah, so we absolutely can add lessees to the policy. I think the one issue for the board's consideration is just that the policy is really intended to apply to, I think, or in most instances, intended to apply to companies or LLCs or other businesses. There's a number of tenants that are just individuals who might be using the plane for their own, the hangar for their own personal use. We can include that, but it will create potentially some issues related to enforcement and otherwise. But we are happy to include that if that's the board's direction.
I guess I'm thinking of our, as an individual, you can't, that's a tough enforcement. But in terms of our lessees that are SASOs on the field, I think that this should apply to SASOs.
And I think that would address the concern that some staff members had about enforcement, and that would be an easy edit, and that can be made if the board moves forward as part of the motion.
Rick?
No comment.
No comment? So do people agree with this, or
Totally, with your modification.
sure
And
with
make
the
that
SASO
motion?
lessees? Make a motion.
Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
No.
I keep
I got the
seconding.
resolution. You got it. You're doing such a good job, Rick. Except for when it cuts you off.
I move to approve the Justice, Equity, Diversion, and Inclusion JEDI Resolution and Policy Instruction 320, non-discrimination by vendors, contractors, and
SASO lessees. Is
SASO lessees.
that right?
Yes, thank you.
I'll second.
You guys are awesome tonight. All right, roll call.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Motion carries.
Finally. Okay,
Wait, Hardy, thank you for bringing that to us.
oh, yeah. Good job, Hardy. Annual appropriation limit resolution. Is that Kelly?
This is, another standard portion of our audit. We do a calculation with James Marta. They go through it. We all agree that yes, we are below the limit, and yes, we are below the limit. There's a letter in your package that explains more, but we just do need a motion to pass that resolution 2022-04.
I move we approve Resolution 2022-04 of the Truckee Tahoe Airport District and waive the reading.
I'll second it.
Is there any public comment? Okay, roll call.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yeah.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. All right, number 12, update to Wells Fargo account signatories. Any public comment?
One more housekeeping item.
Yep.
Thanks for putting up with all these. So this one is to take Kevin Smith, our former GM, off the account and to add Rob to it. And there's a corresponding resolution 2022-05.
Okay. I move that we approve Resolution 2022-05 of the Truckee Tahoe Airport District and waive the reading.
Second.
Roll call.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Moving
Thank
along.
you.
Number 13, call for general election in Nevada and Placer County. Is there any public comment? Okay.
None?
No objections.
Awesome. Another housekeeping item. You guys need to pass Resolution 2022-02 and 2022-03 to call general election to both Nevada and Placer County.
I'll make that motion.
I second.
Roll call.
Director Diamond?
If I vote no, then do we just stay this way forever? No, okay, then yes.
Director Hetherington?
Yes.
Director Odette?
Yes.
Director Rolfe?
Yes.
Director Stevens?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Last action item, consultant services for future board strategic workshops. Is there public comment? Don't see any. Rob, you want to talk to this?
This morning, the board had a workshop, which is was scheduled as just one workshop. And I would recommend that after I believe, a successful workshop this morning, talking about a variety of topics around board governance, that it would be appropriate and desirable to move forward with a series of workshops. And working with the president, we would like to go out to bid and solicit some individuals, corporations, people in this business to help facilitate a series of workshops for the next several months.
Your motion? I don't have it. You do it.
I don't think we have.
Just direction to staff.
You don't have
Do
anything?
you want to ask public comment or?
I did already.
Oh, you did. Why do I'm just so not used to this anymore.
First.
I move that we authorize President Rolfe and General Manager Rob Etnier to seek, I could do the last names, to seek and select a consultant vendor for future board strategic workshops consistent with SPI 303 expenditure authorization / procurement with a contract not to exceed $50,000.
All right.
I'll second it.
Director Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
Director Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Okay. Next up, we have the Air Show Committee update. Is there any public comment regarding the Air Show? And if not, go ahead, David Love.
Thank you very much for allowing me a few minutes on your agenda. Reminder for everyone, our Air Show and Family Festival is set for Saturday, July 23rd. Please take a look at our website. We're constantly adding more information, links to vendors, links to performers. I think you'll find it of value, anyone who wants to look at it. I'd like to make a formal invitation from the Air Show Committee to the board to see if you could clear in your schedule for one or more of you to attend our safety briefings that we do for the Air Show and Family Festival. The schedule for that is the first one for our Friday rehearsal show will be Friday, July 22nd at 11 in the morning in the boardroom. And for our full air show on Saturday, the briefing takes place at 8 a.m. We can pass that information on to you more formally if you'd like through Rob or Stacy Justinson. Where we are at the moment is we have developed a lot of key components. The Kids Zone already has made arrangements and have commitments for stilt walkers, face painters, puppets, and arts and craft, and music. As they said in our meeting yesterday, a little more to come. The STEM Expo has a large number of folks who've already committed to be a part of our STEM. Just as examples, we have the Headwater Science Institute, UC Davis Environmental Center. We're going to have a drone display, which young people find valuable. It has two components. Actually, there'll be some flying outside the tent for the entire audience to see, and they do little drones and little kind of catch nets where kids can actually fly the drones themselves. Placer County Environmental Engineering would like to come and do a presentation. the Truckee Sanitary District has a full exhibit plus a brand new truck they use for increasing safety and functionality of their system. We have a commitment of an electric glider which takes off by itself, doesn't need a tow plane, fully electric. We've got a commitment from a number of the community businesses to bring out and show new electric products they have, including snow blowers, chainsaws, and all kinds of things I think our community uses a lot, and they're fully electric. One of the things we talked about early on that we'd like to further emphasize this year. We have a program that has gotten national recognition that has asked to come, and we've just made arrangements with them. It's called Safe Launch. It's actually a substance abuse prevention and education program using aviation as the focus. They just were featured in the national magazine, Airline Owners and Pilots Association. They will be creating a large display, a team of folks, and an airplane. Kids get to do all kinds of interactive activities with them, actually get to use water paint on their airplane, which I hope they can wash off afterwards. Looks like fun. There's a great video that we're linking about them to our website if you'd like to see a follow through on that information. So far we have commitments from 30 vendors and nonprofits, who will be on the field, both with products and food, as well as displaying and explaining to the overall community what the nonprofits provide here in the Truckee region. As far as the flying portion, we have commitments from a fairly large number of antique aircraft, historical aircraft. Military is talking about bringing resources. Part of the focus of our air show this year will be the celebration of the 75th anniversary of the United States Air Force. So they're being more involved with a lot of air shows across the country, including ours. We have commitments from 5 performers. The performers will fly in the morning between 10 and 12. We'll take a break over the lunch hour. They will fly again. Our history has been a lot of families and parents like to come out like in the morning, get a chance to be there. They leave at noon, which opens up lots of parking spaces, and other families and communities find the afternoon more effective for their families. So what we find is we have turnover during the day, which serves well the ramp, serves well parking, and gives parents options and community members. Our presenters that have committed are Ann Serbianko. She flies what's called a super decathlon, and Vicki Benzing, who flies a World War II trainer called a Stearman. They were part of a first-time only event in the United States last weekend, which has got all kinds of national recognition. It was the first large air show ever in the United States where every single person involved in producing, conducting, and performing at the air show were women. And that included both Anna and Vicki, but also 2 Air Force lead pilots for what's called the F-35 and the F-16 demo teams. The announcers were all women, the military personnel, all on the field were women from the different branches of the service. So they bring to us at our air show a continuation of some really interesting things and really important things that are taking place in the field of aviation. We also have Rick Perkins, who has a former trainer called a Marchetti, Dave Freeman, who has an aerobatic aircraft, which is pretty darn exciting, a small prop airplane called a Extra 300. And from Reno, Dave Costa is going to bring up his trainer called a Kisa. It's a foreign developed airplane. Over the lunch hour, we're going to feature again in the boardroom our workshop. Colonel Bud Anderson has agreed to come. I talked about it with his son the other day. Bud turned 100 in January. I attended a presentation he did at the Aerospace Museum a few weeks ago in Sacramento. Just as sharp as ever and a lot of fun. So we're going to both honor his 100th birthday, his involvement as a fighter pilot and test pilot for the United States Air Force is part of our Air Force theme. And wrapping that up, Beale Air Force Base would like to have presence with us as a part of the Air Force celebration, as the Air Force is supporting air shows around the country. May include some flybys as well as equipment on the field. So we've got that much accomplished so far. We're meeting every other week to continue our planning process. So we hope that's sort of information and value. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to try to respond.
All right. Any questions?
No.
No? Rick?
No, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, David. It's, you guys have gotten a ton of work done, so very much excited about the air show.
Thank you very much. Well, all of you.
Okay, 16, the master plan update, and runway feasibility study and flight procedures, public outreach.
I mean, we've got the whole, I don't know, should we talk about it, or did you want to?
You have the whole report in the package, and it's available for folks to review that weren't there. I believe we have somebody online here. Mark, I see you there. Mark, did you have any introductory comments or comments from those who prepared the report for us?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Katie had a last-minute commitment, so I told her I would step in. We've done some great outreach with regards to phase 1 of the 2015-2025 master plan update, and along with discussing it in board meetings and in community act meetings, in the usual outreach that we do in AvCom on social media and also website. We held 2 community meetings. One was virtual, well attended with over 50 of our community members attending. That was done more in a like a breakout room workshop with discussing the potential for a 3rd runway and also new flight procedures for that proposed runway, along with existing flight procedures. That was on April 20th, and then on May 3rd, we had an open house. It was really nice to have the public come face to face with us again, back in the boardrooms. Had almost 100 people attending that, so it was a great reflection of our community coming in to learn about some of these potential updates to the master plan, and then also give their input. We had, I'd like to thank the staff that was involved, the board members that attended and helped out with those, and then also our consultants, Flight Tech Engineering, Mead and Hunt, HMMH, Aviatrix Communications. It was really good to see that kind of energy put into public outreach again, especially post-COVID. Aviatrix did a summary report, and which you can see here in your board packet. It had some different communication methods. There were some handwritten notes that people commented, and then we also we collected, each station collected input on that we were receiving from the public on everything from the 3rd runway to proposed flight procedures for the 3rd runway, for proposed new flight procedures on existing runways, and it was just a great turnout and great input from the community, and we thank everybody involved. Any questions?
Any questions for Mark? We're all there.
Not for Mark, other questions. So where are we at in this master plan? This is just the draft. If we approve the draft, where do we go from there?
Okay, so I need a little bit of direction, because I'm not sure if this item is a ad hoc update, but the ad hoc update is later in the agenda, or if this is specific to the report that Aviatrix had submitted and based on our activities to this date. Does anybody have
I
any
think
thoughts
this
on
is
that?
the outreach and feedback report.
This is the outreach and feedback
Oh, you'll
report
get a
for
chance
that
to-
one event. There is another item later for an update from the ad hoc committee for master
right.
plan.
Okay, yeah. So my only comment on that is sort of echoing what Mark had said. I did feel like the Zoom outreach meeting we did was not effective for various reasons. I thought the public outreach one was much more effective. I think in terms of our communication to the public, I think we are doing a much better job about stating where we're at and what we're trying to do. And I do feel like there are those in the community who simply don't want to hear it, who want to jump ahead to their conclusions on stuff. We are looking, it is feasibility study. We are still in the feasibility stage. And I think based on that, I think the district is doing a good job, and I thank everybody who was involved with that last outreach, all the staff, the board members, the public who came, and our consultants there. To address one thing that Teresa had hinted at later, we did have a report from somebody that one of our consultants, this person stated that this consultant said something which was derogatory toward the entire process. I pushed back on it. We pushed back on the person who made the claim, and the person backed down. So we don't believe that, in fact, that consultant did say anything along those lines. So just wanted to clarify that.
And David, I wanted to take this opportunity to state also that you and Rick will also be discussing phase 1 of the master plan update at a coffee talk on May 31st in Tahoe City.
Yeah, thank you. That May 31st, Tahoe House Bakery and Gourmet, Tahoe City, 8:30 a.m. Rick and I ad hoc outreach for master plan. So for anybody that wants to show up there, talk to us about that, we will be there.
All right, is there any public comment on the outreach? Oh, I'm sorry, Mary, did I interrupt? Did you have?
We haven't gone yet.
I can go afterward.
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, my only comment was I wanted to thank DVQ for sending out, sent out a message to people who have called in and had comments in the past, that was very valuable because, you know, those folks don't necessarily e-blast, they don't necessarily, it was an invitation, and that was huge. So I wanted to thank you for making that effort.
Yeah, I had a comment, not a question. I think that the outreach has been great. I think that the Zoom was, that the public didn't really understand where we were in the process. So it wasn't quite as effective, but I was, and this is just editorial because this may or may not be the point to say it, but I'm surprised and maybe even shocked at how much resistance there is to a new runway, even by the people that we think it would benefit. The lack of support for it was shocking to me. And even the report that said only 12% of flights might be offloaded. And I don't know if this is appropriate. I'm not sure if this is the time to discuss this, but it's quickly in my mind coming up as a non-feasible option, just based on public feedback. That's it.
All right. Rick, did you have any?
I do not, thank you.
I might have other, well, in that vein, what was lacking is, I thought, was this idea that the operation ability of our current airport now is over 200,000 operations, and we're getting 40 or 50,000. And it wasn't clear to people because in their minds, they think third runway, it's going to increase operations. So that is a real piece of important communication that needs to be clarity, you know, because it's not increasing.
I get that. I'm not sure how much more we can outreach.
But that number wasn't ever in big letters.
Okay.
Are we done with the outreach? Or do we have opportunities for more, or this was what was scheduled, the two?
That's what was currently scheduled. We're looking at the next phase of
Yeah.
what we're doing. And we'll
Okay.
be bringing that back here before long.
Okay. All right. Board committee assignments and ad hoc committee reports. Who's Mountain Housing Council? Is that you or you're on that? That's you.
No report.
No report. Okay. Workforce Housing, JPA.
Lauren attended
Lauren?
this meeting.
That's me. I'm the new member representative on the Workforce Housing Agency representing the airport. This is my first time giving this update. We discussed at the May meeting, we signed a 5-month agreement with Agnew and Beck to work, to continue work in developing their strategic plan, which also incorporates a 10-year pipeline for housing, as well as a housing fund. So we're excited to continue that process with Shauna Doherty and some additional people that work for Agnew and Beck. We were also approached earlier in May by a company that goes by Landed, and it provides down payment assistance to essential professionals in the education, healthcare, and government employee field. They want to partner with the Workforce Housing Agency to provide that as an offering to the Truckee, Tahoe region. The terms are going to be reviewed by agency partner legal counsel just to understand further about the program, but they could provide up to $120,000 for borrowers to reach that 20% down payment. It's a shared equity, so the borrowers have to commit at least 5% of the down payment, and they would fill in 15% more to equal the 20, or the borrower could do 10% and Landed could do 10% to equal the 20. So we're excited about that, to offer that down payment assistance program. The Workforce Housing Agency was trying to develop the program ourselves, and Landed takes care of that for us. So we're super excited. We're going to have more information about it in June, and hopefully we'll approve that partnership and have that as a product for member agency employees to access to. Mind you, the popularity of it hinges on what's on the market and what employees can actually feasibly afford. But the only commitment the workforce agency has to make to hold up our end of the bargain is just simply communicating about the program, having it in new hire orientation packets, in our e-blast emails. So we just have to just tell our employees that this program is available to them, and that's it. Other than that, that's what we discussed, and I will return next month with more.
Thank you, Lauren. And
you,
I'm
Lauren.
attending those meetings as well with Lauren.
Oh, good.
Just to stay informed and abreast and participate in the conversation.
Yeah. Are there any questions for Lauren?
I just have one. I mean, just the clarity again, it's only for teachers, healthcare, government employees, not for other professionals who live in the community and have jobs.
It's only, it's for what they call essential employees, government, healthcare, education. And it's going to be, initially it's spoken about starting with member agencies, but then be available to all public agencies in the area. But that will come like a month or two later.
Awesome. All right. Master Plan Project Ad Hoc Committee. David?
Yeah, so we just had a meeting the other day. We were looking at revised usage estimates based on what Mead and Hunt had been looking at in their operations. They were interesting. There were trends there. As Teresa pointed out, local pilots trend toward we don't like this. Transient pilots trend toward this could be an important opportunity for increased safety because of the straight-in approach, the LPV approach, that sort of thing. It was interesting to note that in that year that we looked at the data from, I guess it was last year, more than half of our entire operations were conducted in calm winds. I'm going to say once again, more than half of our entire operations were conducted in calm winds. That's significant because we do get pushback from people saying prevailing winds don't support this or that. So that is significant, and that is coming from Mead and Hunt. So we're going to continue on with this. Again, this is all a research process at this point in time. They are going to discuss this, get more information from a wider scope of pilots, both in terms of not just those who are here, but a more diverse pilot population, getting more into VFR traffic, getting into different types of aircraft. The majority of the people they spoke to in that first group were IFR operations with higher performance aircraft. So that was a consideration. So yeah, we're just continuing to look into it. I feel like it's going well. I don't know if Steve, if Rick, if you have anything to add.
I do not.
That would be it then.
All right. Any questions?
The other question I would have, and it kind of links to the 220, I mean, it's when this is feasibility and just kind of clarity. Are we waiting till we're done with the feasibility report, or are we going to start environmental? Because part of environmental is access to the land when it's not covered in snow. And that affects 220 potential. It also affects this. So is there an idea of combining that? Because the same type of staff would do the bugs and the bunnies and the birds and the plants.
We actually had to stop the meeting at this point because we had to have the conversation that we had earlier about 220. We had to have that in public before we could continue in the ad hoc on that discussion. So we will, that right now, Brad is waiting for us to get back to him on our thoughts as the ad hoc on the 220 thing too.
We have another meeting next Tuesday.
Right, but we couldn't tell him until we had that discussion publicly. So now we can go back and, unless he's been watching and knows where we stand on it now, but yeah, that.
The idea would be it's simultaneous because it's all the same land.
Yeah, that's what, yeah. So we're following that through, and I think, Rick, you and I talked about this the other day. We are committed to see this through till we get to the point where we have all of the data. It's not going to be this board because we're so far away from making a decision on this, but all of the data that a board in the future will need to say no or yes to this runway so that they don't have to open this up again and go back and do all this stuff. So
the other question I have is, you're saying more than half of the entire operations were in calm winds, and is this the definition of 4 knots or 10 knots? I mean, because different aircraft can do different things.
Yeah, no, it was 3 knots or less.
Knots.
Yeah.
So how do we get that information out, or education? That's...
I mean, for me, it's not, this entire process would be so much easier if all of our issues were completely isolated, but there's so much connection between so many of the things that we do. One of the things that I am eager and encouraged about this process is that we get data points like this so that we can, like when we're talking about the pilots group or when we're talking about other things, other outreach options that we have, to impress upon some pilots in the community that we could actually be reducing that impact today by not flying off of 2.9 in these calm wind conditions, because this is where we get the majority of our friction from the community and where we have the greatest safety concern. If knowing these things and we going through these processes, I think that to get to your point, we might actually find that we have opportunities for education and for outreach to the pilots that are not specific to any one of these things, but that might, in fact, impact our situation here, which becomes a data point in the future as to whether or not a third runway is even a viable option or even a necessary option.
And that wind study was based on 3 knots. But jets, as I understand it, can deal with a lot bigger, and their IFR. And is that part of the consideration or study in any way? Because they can do 10 knots.
There were, for different classes of aircraft, when he's doing the analysis or the prediction of when operations might move from runway A to runway B, it does vary based on the class and the winds that are there. I mean, as anybody who's flown in and out of Reno knows, that is a runway 1634, and there's often horrendous crosswinds that make the approach not a lot of fun. But those bigger aircraft can handle them. Right. So the question, and we saw this, Rick, in some of the data points about, especially for the transient operators who were eager about the straight-in LPV guidance down to a landing on runway 16, that they would be willing to accept a less than ideal wind condition for that added safety margin there. And then the same thing on the departure for 3-4, because it is a lower terrain, they don't have to worry about that as on the climb out. So there were, on the bigger aircraft, they do have options. On the baby airplanes like I fly, we're very sensitive to that. So, okay. And that's why I think in the next round of outreach, when they are speaking to a more diverse pilot population, we might get input that's different than what we've got now.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? You guys are up next. Again, hangar use, it's you two, right? Hangar use policy?
Yeah, you have to do this one, right?
I do.
I'm sick of hearing me talk.
Well, I've been out of the country and I've missed all of the meetings.
Fine, I'll
I'm
talk.
Back and maybe I'll get up to speed.
Yeah, we did. We had an initial meeting about this. We hashed back and forth some ideas. Hardy was there, Jill was there, Rick and I were there. And so that process is moving forward. We're just looking at what of the ideas that we've got, which ones are most likely to be manageable, or something that could actually lead to an increase in the various goals that we had for even looking at that. I don't know, Hardy, do you want to add anything to this?
I mean, Hardy, do you want to add anything? Jill is getting data on which hangars need improvement and which ones are good.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, Climate Transformation Alliance report. We haven't met since the last report, so there's nothing to report out for that. ACT attendance by Board of Directors, that was Mary and me.
Any future desires for attendance for the next meeting?
Yeah, so usually we decide who's going to do June. I'll be out of town for June, so somebody else.
Not all summer.
Are you? What is the topic for June?
CLEP, I believe.
Yeah, okay. Land use?
I'll do, if nobody wants, I'll do June.
What is the subject going to be?
Land use.
Land use. Do you want to, or?
No, I'm going to be at LAFCO that day in Auburn.
I'll do it.
And I'm not going to speed to get back.
Land use, it's at 6 o'clock, right?
Yes.
Because I've got,
that's the 8th, I believe.
moving the roof.
Oh. Okay, so we have Mary and David for the 8th. Do we have a topic for July?
I don't think we do.
I was thinking
We have a tentative one, yeah. Master plan follow-up.
Okay.
Yeah, good, yeah.
All right, I can do July. You're out. You've got LAFCO
Just a question
probably.
about, is that master plan going to be anything that is going to be a?
Oh, that's right.
if
It's
not
just you and Rick.
too?
Yeah. It has to be you and Rick, right?
I might be able to do July.
Okay. Good point. All right.
And that that date will be in July. Let me think here.
It's the 13th.
Yeah.
Is there, while Rick is looking up that, what, is it, or is it basically, are we just thinking like just another public outreach, come and talk about whatever you want on the master plan, or are we thinking about something specific that?
Yeah, Hardy was just indicating with this voice, maybe a summary of where we're at to date.
Okay.
To catch everybody up, get everybody up to speed.
Okay.
Great.
Okay,
guess that's right.
I will put it on my calendar for July 13th. 6 o'clock. Are we doing this Zoom, or are we ever gonna do this in person? I think we're a better chance to get more people in Zoom, aren't we?
Yeah.
For ACT, yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
I feel like it works.
Yeah, I
Yep.
think so too.
That'd be the plan to continue with the Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
It's his thing, so he gets to tell you.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
true.
right, it's your thing. We're just guests.
Yeah.
Real
Along for the ride.
Okay.
Okay, formation of general manager recruitment ad hoc committee. Any thoughts?
I have thoughts on this.
Go ahead.
I have two thoughts. My first thought was that you two did a spectacular job in landing us a spectacular candidate. That's you. And my second, which is related to that, is I'm not especially eager to see this end. I feel like if we form that group and start this process right now, I would like things to stabilize for a little bit without us getting into, that's quite an upheaval. And I realize that we do have a time, 6-month contract, and I don't want to be caught in a bad situation there, but I would love to see this postponed just for a little bit.
Lauren, speak up.
Lauren. She's like, no.
Ultimately, it's your guys' decision. You are in control of filling that position. I will say that the recruitment environment is unprecedented. I think it will take a lot longer than you guys think, especially you have to select a executive recruiter. That takes time. Setting up meetings and interviews to gather what you guys want out of this position, that will take time. I think it will take longer than when his contract is set to be up in October. I would hate for you to delay and then run into an issue come October when you need, if you have a gap. No pressure, Rob. But that will happen very fast.
Yeah.
So I express just caution when it comes to delaying. Now you guys have opportunities. You don't have to wait to the next regular board meeting. You have the ability to make special meetings and make decisions like that quickly if you need to, but I'm concerned about waiting.
So let me ask one other thing, and this is a question for Kat and Mary. If we're talking about an October timeframe, we're talking about making the biggest decision that this board makes a month before an election. And not to sound like we're talking about the US Supreme Court, but maybe this is really a decision for the next board. If there's any way that we could postpone that decision.
We can't operate without a GM, so we
I
have to
understand
convince
that.
Rob to stay.
That's going to be easy. I mean,
He's gonna have so much fun.
He already is.
I'm just thinking about the timing of this. It's like, I feel like this is going to be a huge distraction. You two presumably are going to be running for office. Other people are going to be running for office. We've got big projects that are underway right now. And
How about we talk about it in a month and gives us some time to snuggle up to Rob and see if we can change his mind.
I mean, I would be personally, I'd be comfortable to say officially that you two are ad hocing this again, because I thought you did a great job on that. But I'm not eager to see this change.
You want to do it? I'll do it with you.
I'll do it.
Good.
We'll figure it out and get back to you next month.
Oh, we'll get to you. Yeah. Anything else from this side? No, we've heard you.
I'm good with
That's
it.
good? Rick?
There's a couple factors here. Yes, the preliminary indications that our interim GM is doing a great job. He's learned a lot faster than I could imagine he could have done. But this is a two-way thing. He has to love us too, David. He may say, yeah, I don't know if I want this. I think that he went for interim because that's all we really put on the table. So we need him to do that. And the other thing I'm going to throw out is I think we have a fiduciary obligation to our district to see what else is out there. And I've said that to Rob. I don't know what's out there. It may be nothing. Maybe this is the best thing we could do, and we don't want to do this. But I think we ought to stick our toe in the water and see what else is out there. That's what I think. And I can wait till next month to talk about it.
Mary?
Yeah, if everybody's willing to wait and let's touch it in June, I think that's good. And then he'll have a sense of how fast can I get out of here?
Oh, God.
Or, and then I need that clarity in terms of remembering the process we went through before. We got proposals, and that takes time. And, it's like searching out that's something that we could even do before June, that you could give us a list of several.
Well, I gave you guys a list of 4. One of them back in April. One of them wasn't available until June. I believe that was the entity that David, you suggested we contact. But the 3 gave us a rough proposal. So you guys have, so you have 4 for the ad hoc committee to explore further. They didn't give you a thick book like you would get in a normal RFP process, but we have already started. I was impressed with how fast I was able to get it. So you have something, and then the ad hoc committee can explore further executive recruiting options if you wish.
Okay.
I would at least wait, but start that process first. If you guys can settle on the ad hoc committee, that could be something you can do between now and June.
I'd say we can come up with some ideas. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah. But I do like the idea of letting it, seeing how it all is going too, so.
Okay. I think we have a plan. But we will be talking about this in June. We will not do it again. And you guys will do a little preliminary work in the meantime.
Oh yeah, Mary's gonna do the song and dance.
So with the end of that, is there any public comment about the discussion items and the ad hoc reports? I have a request for a brief bio break. We'll be back in 5 minutes.
to the general manager's report. Who's in charge of that? Lori.
Thanks, Dave.
You're good now, Kat. Are we good? Okay. All right, so, general manager's report, I'll let Rob take this.
Yeah, thank you, Kat. Just brief and initial in your board books there. I would just say after just a few weeks here, my assessment is you've got a great team here. A solid staff with a lot of depth, a lot of caring and passion for this organization, a lot of great work being done here. And it's a privilege to meet individually the team members here and also meet with the board of directors, both individually and now in a workshop. I think all the bones and structure are here of a great organization, and I really have appreciated working with everybody and look forward to continuing to work on our processes and procedures and how we continue to build on excellence here. And appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Kelly, did you have anything to tell us on the finance report? We've read everything, but is there anything you wanted to highlight?
I just wanted to throw out a couple of brief highlights. Year-to-date revenue of $4.8 million, and we are $122,000 over budget, $502,000 ahead of last year. Net income of $577,000 year-to-date, $875,000 ahead of budget, and $833,000 ahead of 2021. And you'll notice in the staff report, I did put in some information about our locals jet program, which we instituted in April after some back and forth fun with AvFuel, but got it in the point of sale system and figured out we're still working out a few kinks. But in the month of April, we did 5,766 gallons of Jet A that were to the locals program. So of the of the 22,551 that we sold, 5,766 was on the locals program.
I'm getting like Rick.
Did anyone have any questions?
Not me.
Any questions
I
for
have
Kelly? Okay.
Just one question in terms of pulling out the low lead, defining what's self-serve and what's full-serve. Oh, what's, if we can separate out gallons sold of self-serve versus full-serve.
I can look into that.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Kelly? I'd like to give Hardy and his voice a break, and we've all read the report. Are there any specific questions that maybe David or Rob could answer on the AvCom report?
I had one other item.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
To go over.
I apologize.
Yeah. Here we go. It is that time of year where we, this is more informational only, but we go back and we look at the COLA that is instituted in July of every year on July 1st. So historically, at the May meeting, we look back at what the April index shows, and in your board packet, you have the April index and the staff report. The current April 2022 index is at 8.1%. That's the class size A, which is keeping us in similar situation with other populations of our size. And staff would recommend following that 8.1% increase unless the May index indicates something different. So at next month's meeting, we'll show you what May looks like, but we would recommend going with either the 8.1 or whatever comes out in May. I just wondered if anyone had any questions on that.
So you're postponing this until next meeting?
Well, we give you the April index and then we approve it usually on the consent agenda at next month.
This month? Now?
Next month.
Okay, any other questions? Anything else? Okay. AvCom report, any questions for Hardy specifically?
I don't have questions. I've got a few comments, but.
Go ahead.
Okay. So this is on the runway utilization part of this. So the first part of it is, I remember when Mary Hetherington wanted to do that, and I was not on the board yet, and I was sitting in the board meeting, and I was thinking, oh my God, what a waste. I thought it was such a bad idea. And I've since realized it's become an incredibly valuable tool for the district for us making a lot of these decisions, is actually seeing these numbers. So we actually know where we're at with this stuff. So Mary, thank you for the runway utilization, for pushing that for that. So on that, I just had 3 points. We've got a 24% reduction in piston departures off runway 29, which is awesome. This is super exciting. This is really, I'm very, very happy to see that. If the tower is involved with that, I think that's great. If pilots are making that decision for themselves, I think that is awesome too. During the winter peak period, the report says that 67% of our operations occurred during calm winds. So that's, the winter period was 67%, and the annual period, as we learned earlier, was just over 50%. I think that these are important numbers, because 70% of our operations are still, in the winter period, still happening off of runway 29. And we know we see aircraft taking off 29 that could use other runways. So I just want to take this opportunity. I've done this on social media. I am begging my fellow pilots to reconsider our runway options to decrease our impact on the community, because we are not having to use that runway 29 all the time. We continue to use it. The data is showing that. And then the last comment here is there are no comments, this is a quote, no comments attributed to runway 2. You know, and I don't know if that's because we're not using it enough, or because that's an indication that runway 2 is actually a really good runway to use. It really doesn't impact the community as much as the departures on 29. So begging my fellow pilots to consider that each time we make decisions about runway use. That's it.
And as I went through this, I was like, yay, large increase on runway 11 departures, the same on relative to 2016. This was, yay, good. And then I noticed that what was not written down was the percent increase in jet departures on 29 were 54%. So there was a 54% increase of jet departures on 29 relative to 2016 before the tower. So that to me is a piece of information that I would like to have seen that captured in here as well. I had to find it by going through the data. And, otherwise it's like, great. But the piece that's not great isn't captured. And that kind of, I would like to see that as well. You want to know the good and the bad and the unintended consequence. But in this case, I think, to be honest, you have to present both sides of the story.
Rick, you have anything?
No, I do not.
Okay. All right. Future agenda priorities and meeting management.
Is that you,
Wait,
Rob?
That's Rob.
Oh, wait, one other thing on Hardee's.
Oh, go ahead.
This was about the contract tower. And on the one hand, it's like, that would save us money, because that would be paid for. Last month you talked about that we have enough operations in the summer months that it would be enough for the federal government to fund it. On the flip side, and again, talking to my brother who was in Van Nuys Tower and several other towers, if you're in the contract tower, if you work for the FAA, noise complaints are nice, but often they're this. So that's just a fact. And so I want us to be very cognizant, if we end up in the contract tower, is it just for summer months? Because that's, and then we pay for it the other months? Or are we in it year round? And asking my other board members, do we want to be in it? It's a lot of money, but we can ask them, we can talk to them and talk to them about when the winds are calm, please really emphasize. You can't tell them, but you can emphasize. And if we're in the contract tower, it's like they're going to do what they're going to do.
So today, what do we have?
We pay for the staffing. If the FAA pays for it, those controllers are not answerable to us we're not paying their salary.
I did some research
Okay.
on this, and thank you for bringing it up because I forgot to bring it up. What I have learned, and Hardy can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to speak on this because I think it's going to hurt his throat to say this. So an FAA contracted tower means the FAA pays the bill. It does not mean that they're FAA controllers.
Okay.
So east of the Mississippi, the FAA typically contracts with Midwest, which is our company. West of the Mississippi, they contract with Serco, which is a different company than ours. I spoke with Larry, our tower manager, because I was concerned about some of the same things that you were, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have guarantees of this. His assumption is that the staff would actually not change. That even if the FAA were to cancel the contract, or basically not contract with Midwest and contract with Serco, that Serco would then want to hire our people because it's so difficult to get people here. He did feel like with regard to noise abatement, it would not change. That even though the FAA was paying the bill, that the tower controllers would still be based on, or working based on the policies that we set here, that they would not in fact be answering to the FAA, I guess you would say. It's not like a new army of FAA people are going to come in and just take this over, most likely. And this is coming from Larry. I think that would be the same people. The concern we have, which I think is real, is we don't know how much the FAA would pay. And that would be between them and presumably Serco. And if Serco decided then that they could not make a profit unless they cut salaries or benefits to our current controllers, we could lose people. So that was to me a big consideration with regard to if there were unintended consequences of moving forward with this, that we might end up saving some money, some district money on the cost of the tower, and then we might end up losing personnel in the tower if Serco were then to cut their pay or cut their time off or anything like that. I'm not sure how much control we would have over that if we moved forward with it, but that was what I learned. I did share some of those the concerns that you had there about like what would happen to our tower if it were FAA funded.
Yeah. And so I guess what that brings up, is there an off-ramp? I mean, if Padilla gets this through and it's funded, we have to accept it.
He's harder to understand than
Kelly
Wu.
Already so articulate normally. It's tough being under the weather. So there's a couple bigger, longer decision-making timelines, both with the actual temporary tower to full-time tower, and then even moving towards a FAA takeover of temporary or full-time tower or new constructed tower. There's some time involved in those decisions and a lot of communication, a lot of conversation still ahead. Is that?
In airports, the FAA doesn't want to add people, so you have to keep your foot on the gas pedal and get added to that.
Trying to get added to the FAA's program is not as easy as it might seem, I think.
So 3 years we've been working on it.
Been working on it 3 years already, Hardy says, and we're just nibbling away at just the beginnings of it.
And with this, you can just nod, Hardy. I know in the past we've talked about FAA involvement in the tower requiring the construction of a permanent tower. Would what we're talking about here also require that, or that's a different thing? Okay. So this is not just a contracting change. This is we need to build a permanent tower for this to happen. Okay.
And I think long-term, from my understanding, we're in a temporary structure now. There are long-term implications, irregardless what direction you go here. Addressing a temporary tower for a long-term tower, if we still maintain our own contract, or the FAA requiring or desiring to have a tower that's a permanent structure, not a temporary structure. Either way, we're heading down the road of permanent structure versus temporary.
Thank you.
Is that it? Find out more. You know. Okay.
Okay.
And thanks for the update on the month. Comments.
All right. Rob, do you want to take the future agenda priorities and meeting management?
Right, item number 21, do we have something we put on the screen that looks like the item that's in the board books that is a calendar type document, I believe?
What are we talking about, rolling agenda here?
Rolling agenda.
I don't see 220 on it for June.
And general manager recruitment.
That too.
So
I want
this
to add
was
something,
put
Madam
together
President.
prior, I'll be working to update that based on today's conversations that I'll summarize here. Maybe I'll combine the next. Thank you. So this was put together previously over a week, 2 weeks old now. So it will be updated based on today's conversations and direction. One of those items would be adding on here is working on future board workshops. Potentially will impact June and July, but I know there is some scheduling once we select a vendor. Some scheduling that will need to happen over the next several months here with board director availability. We'll also be adding an item for general manager recruitment ad hoc committee to have further discussion. We have the item of Runway 220, looking at the extension and expansion.
May I?
And
Yes, you may.
other recommendations or items?
Yeah, I want to add something around feasibility of tiny homes out in the North 40 or whatever that is.
I
South
agree
40.
with that.
I don't know if it's south. From where we're sitting, it's north.
Sort of south. Oh, yeah.
I saw that letter that we got, the public comment letter from
Yes.
Chris Henderson. I thought,
Yeah.
we have a lot of land, you know, where it could be. And I think I agree that we need to, I mean, I'd like to reach out to him and see what his thoughts are and kind of start trying to develop, having staff start, you know, we'll maybe.
I don't know. I mean,
Another ad hoc
Our
or-
supervisor just left, but
But to.
Right, I think
Key.
there's obviously, Teresa, it's a great topic, and I agree with Mary that the airport district has a lot of land. So at least putting our arms around shaping what that looks like, perhaps what the limitations are, what the jurisdiction looks like, what other authorities are already working on in some areas, how that might overlap or how we might operate in parallel with those other efforts. I think we can start putting a net around this and have a discussion item around that for June. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, which lands, you know, are we
Yeah,
talking
just
about?
let's define it.
And maybe tiny homes is big. I went to that conference that they were doing. I mean, just getting to a point where local workers could have an RV or a van, you know, I mean, this
We could do it like
happens in Santa
Cushman's.
Cruz.
Coachland is throwing in a bunch of tiny homes. I don't know if you guys are aware of this yet, but they're
Yeah.
coming to market.
Yeah.
They're for sale.
Yeah.
For $450,000.
I
It's
know.
crazy, tiny
Well,
homes, and they don't own the land. They're just still paying space rent in Coachland. So that's not what I'm saying we should do, but the cost of those is probably,
Oh, tiny homes, yeah, it was, the prices of those are very expensive.
not
and-
relative to a house.
Exactly, but then you have rent, Coachland charges 700, or they were charging.
Correct.
So, but my point being, for our workforce, I was just in Santa Cruz, they're parking in somebody's parking lot. Providing a space
Yep.
that is safe, that's contained, it might be a trailer just for the summer, because we need employees in the summer. It might be a space in the winter because we need employees in the winter up here. Now we even need them in the shoulder seasons. But
And I'm not
tiny
thinking-
homes, it's like what people picture is, it's a lot higher classification. It's got to meet certain codes. It has to
Fine.
have.
I'm good with that.
Well,
I'm just looking for temporary housing, some sort of safe housing for local employees.
Telluride ended up finding a place for people to park RVs
Yeah.
for permanent use.
Right.
The area you're talking about, tiny homes, RVs for permanent for employees. I'm just kind of curious, is this Placer County? I think it is.
Nevada down there.
There's Nevada.
It's not Nevada.
That's Nevada.
This is even Nevada out here.
Board, I apologize. This is starting to kind of turn into a discussion of the issue.
Josh is still
but I think, we definitely can put it on an agenda for.
Okay.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you,
Gee,
Mr. Nelson.
Dad.
Any other items
So
aside from what we have
I
and
may
just
reach
covered?
out to him to see what his thoughts are.
Yeah.
And if I talk to anybody, I'll talk to you, Teresa. It won't be an ad hoc per se.
Okay, does any other board member have agenda
I have
items?
another request.
You do?
Is that, for 3 months, Dave Hoffman was providing us the Operation and Maintenance Department Management Team Report. It was a one-page, but I found it very insightful, and I would like him to still be providing that. He doesn't necessarily have to be here, but there was a lot of information in there that I found valuable, and I would appreciate having that back in the board book.
Yeah, this month it was the only thing he reported on was the Balkan Post Award, and we normally do awards and special orders of business, so we transferred that.
So one of the things I'm doing is, the new interim GM here is revisiting all staff reports and how we're reporting and what we're reporting, what information is really relevant to be reporting to me as a general manager, and what information I believe is probably most relevant at more of a board level, strategic level that should be reported to the board. I think there's been different approaches to that over time, but I look back through the files and I'm revisiting that right now. And what I wouldn't want to happen is to the board, the staff get in the position where they're reporting operational details to the board and the board giving operational details to the staff. I think that's why you have a general manager here. It's a little bit what we talked about in the workshop, and honestly, I think there's some level of what's being reported that probably is a management function. To be honest, it's an operational function. There's a level of keeping the board informed and aware of things going on and trends that I think is appropriate to bring into this room and this forum. And I think I'm working on finding that right balance going forward. I'm not sure there's been the consistent trend of exact detail in the O&M report, operation maintenance report, that would lend me to believe there's a consistent reporting history there of a thread of something that has any legs to it at this point.
Fred used to sit here in the meeting and he would always have a report. So I've been here, when you're saying historically it hasn't been here, it has. And it's just hasn't been lately. But the information of, Kelly can do fuel sales, but I would like to know GPU, potable water, lab service, the number of times of truck fuelings. I think that's important information for us to know. And if it's included in Kelly's report, but those are pieces of information I would like to see. If I'm the only one who wants to see it, I guess I'm outvoted here, but to me, I'm the data queen, and I think it's important.
Maybe you should meet with Rob before the board meeting and go over all that stuff, because to me, it feels like operations and not something we're necessarily involved in.
Yeah, I'd love to build a level of financials, which I think it's, pretty much there, to a level of reporting that would give you plenty of comfort at a monthly, a quarterly, and an annual basis that you would feel satisfied with being informed and provide an oversight in your fiduciary responsibility. Adding context that along every month is something I want to find the right balance of. Right.
Okay, I guess I don't get it.
Well, you could probably set up a meeting and get it. You get it. It's obviously tracked.
Do you get it? Do you get the GPU and laugh cart data?
As I mentioned earlier, I'm working on with staff the nature and the detail of these monthly reports that would come to me so that I can appropriately synthesize that and share that with the board and the public as appropriate. I don't think we're there yet right now. Right.
And I'm just looking at other information he's provided. And it's been valuable, but
I would suggest too that the self-serve versus full-serve 100 low lead thing that we were talking about earlier kind of falls in the same category of what level of detail are we providing.
That sounds like information that GM should have. Doesn't affect our policy as far as I can tell.
Right.
So give me a few weeks and I'll produce the next report for the next board meeting, and I welcome that feedback on what level that satisfies the entire board's need for information. Absolutely.
Can I just say one thing about that? Because I do feel like when we're looking at financials, because fuel sales are by far the most significant expendable that we have here that affects financials, and I understand the getting those every month. On the other things, I do feel like it's relevant information when we're making a decision about rates and fees and about what we want to do and what we don't want to do. I think that stuff is super valuable, but I'm not sure on those smaller FBO services monthly. I mean, I'm not sure from a board perspective that it's actionable for us, but I think if we're making a decision about those services, I would definitely agree.
The information's there. You can go get it.
So I would like to thank Rob for a great first meeting. I'd like to wish Kat a great trip to Portugal, and I'd like to move we adjourn.
We've got one more thing to do.
Oh, shoot, sorry. I missed it.
It's okay. I've missed it too. But we like to just sum up direction to staff from the board and steps moving forward for Rob for the next month.
Could we do the board member report?
Oh, attendance? Did anybody go to a conference?
I kind of did.
Oh, okay.
I attended the pilots group noise abatement training, which David Van Quest gave, and it was exceptional. David did a fantastic job. I thought the content was super valuable, and I was very happy to see that part of the pilots group come to fruition, and I hope that more pilots avail themselves of that information, because it was really good. I thought I was doing a great job with noise abatement, and I do the training, and I realized there was actually something I could be doing better, which I will do. So thank you, David.
Awesome. Okay, do you have direction?
The direction I received, I believe, was covered in the additional items to report on to add as agenda items for June that were mentioned as ads, or ones that were covered in the meeting today as follow-up reports. Other than that, that's the bulk of the open session agenda guidance that I've received today.
Okay. All right, now.
Now, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call.
Director Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
Director Odette.
Yes.
Director Rolfe.
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Thanks all.